Hello everybody and welcome. We are here in the Missourian town of Gizycko, which is famous for its two large Missourian lakes. This particular fortress sits right in the middle, and it's been a strategic point of interest between whoever was ruling this particular area, the Prussians, the Russians, the Poles, for hundreds and hundreds of years. This particular fortress was ordered by the war minister of the Prussian government. Remember, Germany was not united until 1870-71. And the war minister at the time was called Boyen. So this is Fortress Boyen. The idea was to use the natural barrier of the Missourian lakes. Now, if you come here as a tourist one day, or if you've been here before, you will know that this whole region, Warmia, Missouri, is dotted with lakes. There are lakes everywhere, some very large, and many smaller lakes, all through, just hundreds and hundreds. Now, the point where Gizycko is, there are two long lakes, and the fortress sits, there's an isthmus of land, and this fortress sits right in the middle. So you'd really have to go around. It provides a very successful defensive barrier, very difficult to breach. And the Russians found this out to their own detriment in the First World War, the Battle of Tannenberg. The Battle of Tannenberg was in August of 1914. It's a very, very interesting battle to think about in terms, comparing it in terms to what's going on now with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, particularly the one from the north into Kiev, because they've had many of the same kinds of logistical problems that they had in August of 1914, which seems incredible with all the modern technology, and yet it's true, because they were bothered by movement of troops in 1914, right at the beginning of the First World War, August, as I said, and they were bothered by communications where they couldn't communicate in code properly, and the Germans, or the Prussians, if you will, were, Germans at that point were reading their, not reading, but listening in on their communications. I suppose reading in some cases, because they did intercept a lot of notes. But also, there was a failure to supply a large army on the move. They had trouble moving from their supplies from the to the narrower gauge, from the wider gauge in Russia. So they hadn't planned properly for that. There was just a complete logistical mess in Tannenberg. And as a result, the Russians lost about 100,000 men. But in Russian terms, this seems to be a kind of, there's a history of expendability when it comes to troops. And we're seeing that to some extent in Ukraine. Now, nowadays, this is merely a historical monument, this fortress. It's not used like the citadel in Warsaw, which is used by the contemporary army. This one is more like the fortress in Modlin, which is next to the airport outside Warsaw. And it's where the rivers, the Narew and Bug combination river, meets the Vistula. It's right there. And it looks very similar to this, although it's a much bigger fort. At any rate, this is an extremely strategic position. We can see that here, because here we have Kaliningrad and the Baltic and Lithuania all around here, and Gizycko is, it's not right in the center, but getting close to the center of the southern part of Kaliningrad Oblast, or Kaliningrad province, if you will. And you can see, here's Gizycko, red dot, and lots of water around, because these lakes are very big. This is a popular, not just a popular strategic position, but it's also very popular with tourists in the summer. And you have a good time spending a couple of days here for sure. All right, So that's all we've got for right now. We'll go in through the Gizycko gate, which is just around the corner, and go inside and look at the fortress a little more. Thanks for watching. Well, that was a nice little run. Pardon me for being a little bit out of breath. A few steps to climb to come up here to the inside of the fortress. I mean, this is very interesting. They didn't mess around. They made these things big. You could put tens of thousands of men in this particular area. And in fact, the Polish military still uses Gizycko. It's still a important strategic center, not this fort. I mean, in this fort there's a student hostel and several permanent exhibitions to do with armaments and coaches and things like that of the mid-19th century. But Gizycko itself still has a large military presence. We noticed even next to our hotel, the St. Bruno Hotel. This is the St. Bruno Hill around here. The St. Bruno Hotel, not far away. I think it's about 700 meters from here, which is a very fine hotel. We enjoyed it. But the St. Bruno name keeps coming up. And I assume this is the patron saint of anarchists, St. Bruno. Who was put to death for challenging some of the precepts of the Catholic Church in the same way that Galileo and Copernicus had done or would do with regard to the movement of heavenly bodies and the Earth's position in the universe, the solar system, the universe. So at any rate, you can see this is quite formidable as a promontory. And remember, with the two lakes on either side, that it becomes really, really difficult to take this position. And you have to go around it. And by going around it, you've got to choose either to divide your forces, or you have to put them all in one place, which makes it easier to choke them off at another. Choke off the invading force, say it's the Russians, in August of 1914. Or the Russians today. You see, we started out with this series of programs on the Suwalki corridor. This is a very, very important strategic point, as I was pointing out to you when we were there, on the southernmost point on the Belarusian border, and then we went up to the border with Kaliningrad and Lithuania. The Suwalki corridor, very important then and very important now. Of course, back then they would just invaded through Belarus. They weren't so concerned with Lithuania. Now there's just that small area to come into this area. Remember, We're just in the middle of Kaliningrad, more or less in the middle of Kaliningrad to the south of the Kaliningrad province, with Gdansk over in the west. Now we see it's the morning. Sun is here, that's due east. Gdansk is be out over there. Kaliningrad would be just to this direction, and of course Warsaw this way. So it's pretty clear cut on a beautiful, beautiful spring day. A day like today, it's good to be alive. So let's consider ourselves fortunate, more fortunate than others at this particular moment. All right, that's all I have. I'm Will Richardson. This is Poland Daily Travel. I'm in Gizycko and the fortress Boyen. See you on the next program.